Welcome back to Gurukul Online. I hope everyone's doing well. Today's lesson is going to be more like a compilation of the materials of practice that we have learned so far in the previous videos. Practice is extremely important, and I always sort of compare practicing sitar or instrument with going to the gym, if any of you can relate. It's because it's what it's supposed to do with proper practice. Every day with proper practice, your muscles are going to open up. Your muscle memory is going to be more and more advanced. It's going to be developed, and overall the result being playing sitar is going to be much more effortless for you, so you can think more and pay less attention to your hands and what they're doing. So that's going to make you much more relaxed, and that's going to give you better results in making music. So before we start, I would like to sort of give you a recap of tuning sitar, as I already mentioned in one of my other videos, which is an in-depth review of tuning the sitar and more. So I always state that tuning is something that is going to be related to your sense of tone and melody. So it's not something that it's not something that you're supposed to learn within a day. It's going to take some time. But again, we have to practice and practice and keep practicing. So the first thing that you need to know about tuning the sitar, the first thing that you need to keep in your mind is the scale. So generally, a sitar is tuned to either C sharp or D. C sharp is recommended for beginners because it's a bit easier on your hands and fingers. But D should be the ideal scale. I play in D. Most people play in D. First things first, you go pick your tanpura or any reference, and you're going to pick sa from D. That's the tonic scale. That's the tonic note of the scale D. And first thing you do is you're always going to tune your jor string first. My sitar is almost tuned, but so I'm not gonna have this position, which is recommended for tuning. So the first thing I do is make sure that my jor string is in tune, which it is, and then I am going to tune the corresponding sa in the tarab, which is. So I make sure both of these notes are in tune, and as you already know, that when the resonators inside the sympathetic or the tarabs are in perfect tune, it's always going to respond automatically with the corresponding note you're going to play. So open string, and you can listen to both the sas from inside. That's done, and then you go for ga. So it's important that you understand the vibration that is the vibrations that we get when we play two notes together. The reference always being the jor string, and then you use that reference to use the other to tune the other strings. So sa and ga, and I think that sounds more precise. And then pa. And notice the frequency, the sound these notes generate together. So that is what we're really looking for. And then sa and sa, and the other sa. This is a bit off. And then Shuddha Madhyam. For those of you who understand what harmonics of a string instrument is, so the positions of where you can achieve harmonics is right about here over sa, here over ma, and sa for any of the open strings. So if you slightly touch just over the string positioned over sa, over the sa fret, you're gonna get this sound. Sometimes it's much more precise for the ears if you use harmonics instead of open notes, but that's something you can learn over time. People who already understand how to play guitar, it should make more sense to them. So, and it's perfect. And then gradually you are going to tune the sympathetic strings. I guess that should be enough of a recap for you. So. So coming back to practice. First things first, as I always say, it's easier and much more effective if you do not run after both your hands at the same time. So it's always important, just like gym, before you go to the weights, you are always advised to get some cardio done. What it does is it's going to warm up your body and it's going to make you prepared for the much harder exercises that you're going to do in the future in that time. So the first thing that I would recommend is activating one of your hands. My hand of choice is the right hand. So at first what we are going to do is we are going to place our hand in the Safret Y, because the line that I'm sure you're developing is going to be also, it's going to help if you have the initial pressure just to get the blood clotting over here, so it doesn't hurt much later. So I always put my hand in Sa, the way I want it, my actual position. I figured that out, and there you go. Second thing is the practice that I showed in one of my lessons. It's the sequence, it's the bowl sequence. So it's okay if you play Dara Dara, but at this stage, which is not, as I said, is not a beginner stage, it's more like an intermediate, preliminary kind of a stage. What you're going to do is, it's easier and more effective if you pick exercises which are a bit confusing. So that way, your brain and your hand is going to learn how to better work together. So if you remember that bowl, which is also available in one of our lessons, is da dara 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 da dara 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 dara. So we are going to do that, and it's always good if you time yourself. So from now on, I'm going to suggest that you, for each exercise, you give yourself 10 minutes, a solid 10 minutes on the clock, and the speed is going to be dependent on your abilities. But slower and steadier is always better than faster and unclear. So it's more of clarity that we are asking for, and not speed, not so much, not at the moment at least. So we go for 10 minutes, we are going to play da 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 da. So just to recap, it should be very bold, it should have power, but it shouldn't sound mushy. So we are also teaching ourselves the perfect balance between the sound produced by the jor string and the main string. So to Sa and then coming back and doing it all over again for 10 minutes. You're going to see that every time that you're going to develop yourself, there are a few pointers which are going to tell you that you're going in absolutely the right direction. For starters, when you're warming up your right hand, and trust me, literally it's going to warm up a bit because of the excess blood flow that is now needed, and you should be having a sensation somewhere around here, which is gonna gradually, it's gonna, the tiredness or the spasm is kind of gonna make itself up around here at a point sometime. But these two places are what we're trying to develop. And as I said, it's always going to be more helpful is when you are warming up your right hand, you are going to keep looking at your right hand and trying to figure out what position gives you the best sound. This is the sound. So every little position that you get is going to give you a separate sound. If you listen to other maestros, you're going to notice that each and every maestro has a signature sound. It's not only because of their sitar, which is entirely different from one another, which is to some extent correct, but it's not the only thing that makes the signature sound. It is also the way a maestro holds the sitar, how his fingers are accustomed to the sitar, how his stroking pattern, how his stroking angle is. That all does come into play. So slowly and steadily, you're gonna come up with the best sound that really suits your ear. It can have more bass, it can have more treble, but sooner or later you're gonna find it out, and this is the way where how you are going to find your stroking technique out. So, as I said, the key thing that you do at the very first, after you tune your sitar and sit down with it, is activate your right hand and keep looking at it and try to figure out what position brings you both comfort for your hands and your body, and as well as your ears, as well as the sound production, as far as the sound production is concerned. So that's number one. I suggest you write it down. The first thing you do is for 10 minutes, you do da 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 da. Sooner or later, after 10 minutes, you're going to see that your hands have warmed out and it's much more freer. So since your hands has done this for 10 minutes, it's almost, it has generated a muscle memory. And so when you move on to your left hand, it's not going to be as troublesome as before. The second thing, and one more thing, resting is extremely important. So after you have an exercise of your right hand for 10 minutes, you give yourself a 2 or 3 minute break. I don't know, stretch a bit if it's needed. And when it's in perfect working condition again, then you go towards your next move, which is going to be activating your left hand. So how do we activate our left hand? So the first thing that you do is keeping in mind that through my eyes, the person watching this is a beginner. So these practices are, or the routine is for beginners only. So the second thing that you do is place your hand again and make sure that since this line is extremely important, you have to make sure that every time you're very cautious about your left hand position. So the second thing you do is play saregama on the frets. Saregama on the frets. So how do you do that? Take a comfortable but not too comfortable speed. That's something that you have to figure out, kind of. So how do we understand what speed is best suited for you? So we are looking for the best balance for clarity and speed. So the moment you lose clarity or start losing clarity in some kind of a speed, what you need to understand is that very speed, or maybe just a bit less, is what you're trying to achieve, and thus that is going to be your practicing speed. So for beginners, I think saregama padha nisa should be something like you let every note breathe. What is breathing? So a frequent problem among beginners is that they tend to get a bit excited and they tend to move their hands before this note can breathe. So what am I talking about? So but we are not looking for this. We are looking to stay till absolutely the very end of the time that we are allowed to stay in each note according to the tempo. So without doing, we're going to do just playing on the edge, letting the note breathe for the entire time that has been allotted to the note according to the tempo. So it can be lower, it can be higher, but what we are trying to do is not compromise with the clarity whatsoever. So that's the second thing that you need to do for another 10 minutes. So you're already down to around 24 minutes of practice, provided that you take 2 minutes break from every practice session. One more funny thing is that when you're going to practice alone, your mind is going to give yourself excuses. It might itch somewhere. You might tell yourself that if you're looking for comfort and you are going to have to, let it go. But that is the single most horrid mistake that you can ever make. You cannot let yourself go. You have to. That's why the clock is. So it keeps on telling you to keep pushing yourself till you can't no more. For now, it's 10 minutes, but as we grow older, in context of the sitar, that time is also going to go beyond 10 minutes. So that's number 2. Number 3 is activating this movement, which is mir, which we have already learned. So we have already learned what 1 fret mir and 2 fret mir is. Allow me to give you a recap. So if we play sa, re, ga, and if we are going to pull from sa, so that's the first note, and re and ga, so that's 2 parta. So sa, re, ga. So we already kind of studied that. It's time that we do it again in every practice. So that's your third thing that you need to practice. 2 parta. What? So this practice is going to need you to figure stuff out because it's not really as simple as playing frets. So this is going to be initially very difficult, and it's going to be tiring, and it's going to make you want to leave this practice. But trust me, and more, trust yourself. You give it 7 days, and I guarantee that you're going to see yourself getting better and stuff making more sense to you. Just a little pointer. When you're going to practice, a commonly done mistake is you play it once and then you shift. I think it's better if you give every attempt, every fret, a chance of at least 10 times. So which each time, the first 2 times is going to be confusing, the second 2 times it's going to start making more sense, and so on and so forth. So what I want you to do here is when you keep on doing one thing over and over again, it kind of goes inside your brain like a chant. So every time you're going to do it, what's going to happen is your brain is going to have a mental map of the distances, and it's going to tell your fingers that you cannot, if you're looking for this specific note and you have to pull on it, so you can't really the stoppages. It's gonna be safe to your muscle memory. That is what we are looking for, because Neel is going to be exceptionally important throughout your sitar lives. So, having that said, Dhani Sa and Sani Dha, you keep on doing this and keep on doing this till the accuracy is improved. And sooner or later, you're going to gain more speed with not compromising of quality. And eventually, and this entire routine made up of 3 things so far is going to it should be able to, it should turn you into something which is ready for the next stage. The last thing that I want you to practice is a practice, but it's more like a refreshment because it sounds amazing. So all I have to do is, I don't know, spend around 5 minutes to 10 minutes if you can to play from sa to sa and then back again using chala, which is So that's it for today, folks. You have four important practicing materials. I just showed you what comes after what and what the results might be. We are overwhelmed by your comments and emails, and we expect more, especially if you're going to run into problems, especially with your left hand, because this is very important. So write to us. We are always waiting. Thank you. See you on the next class.